Hi, hope you're all well. Um, for this week's video, I want to talk about something that quietly shapes many people's relationship with food. And it's something that's rarely actually questioned. It's just something that we think we know about. Um, but actually, when you look more closely at it, it's surprising what we discover. And that is hunger. See, in the dieting world, hunger has a terrible reputation. It's treated a bit like an enemy, something that you can suppress or try and suppress, try and ignore, or distract yourself from, or in the classic case of many change processes that were talked about, particularly related to weight loss, is power through, use your willpower to get through it. Um, and really, it's this battle with hunger that becomes quite a problem for many people. But in reality, hunger isn't really a problem at all. The problem is something much more subtle than that, and that's really about confusion. Confusion, you might be going, well, what's that got to do with hunger? Well, most people haven't lost control around food because of their hunger. They've lost clarity about some signals that they're receiving. So, over time, what happens to the majority of us in our society and culturally now, because of our access to food, what's available to us, we stop recognizing what hunger actually feels like. So, um, it can mean a physical hunger sense of, but it also can be emotional. It can be around mental fatigue, tiredness. Um, we can get hunger related to stress, and many of us know about boredom. So what I mean by that is that when we're bored, we might sense hunger. Um, Hunger might be a routine that we eat at certain times, we do it a certain way. So it's the routine we're following. Simply can be a habit. And all of these forms of hunger that we have all blur together as one and we're confused. So we eat in a reactive way rather than a responsive way. So food can become the default answer to things like, it's certainly not because your body's necessarily asking for it, but something feels uncomfortable, like you're bored, like your emotions get risen, whatever happens. And we then turn to hunger and we see food, well, sorry, we turn to food. Hunger is actually attached to it, and it isn't actually the physical symptoms that it originally was meant for. It's related to so many other things. And so we're using food, and we're saying we're hungry, and we're using food to satisfy these other things. But the reality is that's not what's really happening. We're not hungry. We don't need the food. Now, one of the important things is that because you do that, because you respond in these particular ways, you're not failing. It's just that you've learned a behavior. It's a classic behavior loop. It's a habit. Um, you know, I mentioned it in the email that I posted that one client said that they realized they weren't hungry for food, they were hungry for relief. And the relief came about, the specific situation for them was when they were working really hard, they they wanted a relief from that. They wanted a distraction from that. And that was when they ate. They actually turned for food and they left. They got away from the place they were in and they went for something to eat instead of being in that place. That's what the relief was. And when they realized that, when they saw it, that one thing changed everything for them. Now, what's also important about this is that they weren't um, trying harder. They weren't focusing to do anything different. They weren't adding more rules in. They were just noticing. So a lot of the times you'll hear me come back to this. It's about the change coming from awareness. See, insight doesn't come from willpower. It comes from what we see. And that's important because awareness doesn't force change. It allows it. So, and this is such an important part of light minds and why it is light minds. Like the way most people come about change, particularly in this area of getting into great shape, is they think it's about efforting, it's about forcing things, it's about willpower, it's about discipline. And you hear these statements all the time from people, when in fact, there's a much, much easier way to bring about change. And that's to allow it to happen through awareness, through increasing your awareness. You see, when you start distinguishing what kind of hunger is present, then the byproduct of that is that eating becomes simpler for you. And there's not a perfect way of doing it. There's not a rigid way. You don't have to be in control. You just have to be clearer because you're actually seeing um, what's really going on. And the clarity that you gain has the calming effect on you as a system. You see, so let's be specific. Let's take one of those things. If you mistake thirst for hunger, which is incredibly common in people, food will not satisfy that thirst. It can't. You'll eat and still feel unsettled. If you swap, if you start, if just like the client I was referring to, if the person wanted relief and they then attached it to food, but the food wasn't going to give them the relief. It never will do. What they got the relief from is leaving what they were doing. That's what they saw. You see, if you're thirsty and you recognize that's the form of hunger, then immediately the body will settle. Nothing dramatic's happened. You just responded more accurately than the loop, the habit that you'd created, you're conditioned to. So the same thing happens with emotional or mental hunger. It doesn't matter what type of hunger it is. Once you see it clearly, things will soften on their own. And this is where sustainable weight loss, and you hear me talk all the time about sustainable weight loss. Why? Because at the end of the day, I don't know anybody that really just wants weight loss for the short term. Yes, some people might have short-term goals, for example, getting married or something like that, but they would rather keep the weight off still. I know it's a short-term, relatively short-term target, but if you're going to put the effort in, you might as well sustain it. And it's this kind of thing that's really important for sustaining what you achieve. And it's not about eating less, but it's more about listening more accurately and understanding and being aware of what's really going on. See, so many people assume weight loss comes about through doing more, being more disciplined, restraining yourself more, putting more effort in. But in reality, it really does come about from removing misunderstanding. You see, when eating is driven by confusion, it can feel really chaotic and can be quite exhausting. But when it's driven by clarity, it becomes much calmer, more natural. You're not trying to fix hunger, you're just responding appropriately to what the signals are really telling you. Now, the beauty about this approach is you don't need to get it right every time. You're not aiming for perfect awareness. There's no such thing. It's not about perfection. What you're doing is building familiarity. And the more you see these things, the more familiar it will become for you. And then you'll get a sense of, oh, this is tiredness, or this is stress, or actually, this is genuine physical hunger. And each time you notice that, you're retraining your system, the conditioning inside you, and there's no pressure required from you. Now, I kind of say this virtually in every video that I put out. You can try it, and the thing I suggest is virtually always the same. You know, before eating something, just pause for a few seconds. No analysis. Don't start analyzing things. You don't need to decide anything. Just pause and ask yourself, what kind of hunger is this? That's it. You might not hear anything to start with. You might not really sense anything. But don't make any judgment. Don't think you have to fix anything. There's no right or wrong answer there. And so if you hear yourself saying, I don't really know, that's fine, because this is the first time you're doing it, the second time, third time, doesn't matter. Because even that answer is clarity. And often you'll notice that once you start asking the question, the real power is the urgency changes itself. The body's being heard. And when the body feels heard, it relaxes. So just to summarize, if hunger has felt like an enemy in the past, why don't you just for the week, if that's all you want to do, try and soften that relationship? Because hunger really isn't the problem, misunderstanding is. And understanding comes not from effort, but from noticing, just seeing. That's it. So have a go if you like. See what comes up. If you are in the program, in the Facebook group, and you want to post something about it, feel free to do so. Thanks very much.